This country has a long and tragic history of school shootings. According to the Everytown for Gun Safety organization, there have been 272 school shootings since 2013. There's now a virtual reality program that would put teachers and school administrators inside an active shooting so that they could learn how to respond. It's not in the school system yet, but apparently it's coming out this spring. When you look at it, it looks a lot like a video game, but the software you're seeing here, it was developed by the government in collaboration between the Department of Homeland Security and the Army. An initial version of this software was first used to train first responders, but this school simulation, this version that was adapted to train teachers and administrators, is obviously causing controversy and is a sensitive issue for families who have been touched by school shootings. Joining me now is Nicole Hockley. She's the co-founder and managing director of Sandy Hook Promise. She lost her beautiful son, Dylan, in that horrible day in 2012. I am really glad to talk to you about this, but I hate that I have to talk to you about this because I know it brings back too much for you. So I acknowledge that right off the bat, Nicole, okay? This software, you've had a chance to hear about it, you've had a chance to see it. What are your thoughts that this is now available for school administrators and teachers to train for the eventuality of a mass shooting?
You know, watching segments of that video, it was incredibly hard because, of course, I can only imagine that this is what my son might have experienced and those at the school that day. But it made me incredibly sad that that's where we are as a country, that we are so focused on what do we do when something is going to happen, rather than what are we going to do to prevent it from happening. And yes, school shootings are a problem, but are we going to now have versions for movie theaters, churches, malls, music concerts, all the places where mass shootings continue to happen in this country? This implies an acceptance that this is part of life, and I refuse to accept that.
You're not alone there. The Vicky Soto Memorial Fund, of course, Vicky Soto, the teacher that died that terrible day, posted on Twitter, quote, "We condemn this in the strongest way possible." I imagine that is being echoed by all of the people within Sandy Hook and Sandy Hook Promise.
Certainly within Sandy Hook Promise, we focus on how do we teach students and teachers how to identify someone who's at risk and prevent it. And, you know, we hear from students in some of the states that we train that after every active shooter drill, they hate these so much, practicing these drills, that they do a lot of our Say Something activities afterwards because the students are saying, we don't want to focus on how do we hide and run. We want to focus on how do we stop this from happening. And that's where we really need to be focused.
Interesting. That's what you're hearing from the students themselves.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting because you know that on the other side of this argument, there are going to be people to say, look, this isn't any different from practicing fire drills or when you're about to fly and the flight attendants go through the safety demonstration, that this training is inevitable and important in today's world. How do you react to that, Nicole?
I don't say that we shouldn't be doing this training in the same way that we do need to practice fire drills and air safety, but there's also a lot of preventative measures put in place for preventing fires, for preventing incidents on airplanes. What we're not focused in is on how do we prevent these shootings, and there are actions that we can take to prevent them, and that is what's personally frustrating. You can't just deal with by putting a Band-Aid on the issue and expecting, okay, that's just the way it is, and that's what we're going to do. Focus on getting to the root cause of the problem and stopping it from happening in the first place.
Nicole, it is a delight to speak with you again. Please know we only ever send warm embraces your way. Thank you for putting your energy into the work you do to make sure that other children don't go through what your Dylan had to. Joining me now is Laura Carno. She's familiar to you because she's been with us before. She's the executive director of Coloradans for Civil Liberties, also one of the organizers of the FASTER program in Colorado, that is a training and response program to help stop school violence. And we've spoken about that on this very program. Laura, good to see you. I'm curious, when we heard about this program, I thought, I wonder what Laura's reaction to this is, because you are looking at the idea of training teachers and training administrators. Does this line up with the kind of training you want to see in the schools?
Yeah, and first of all, let me say that more training is always better than less training. And back to what your previous guest was just saying, people like me who do this sort of training for armed school staff, we want to prevent this from happening too. I support everything that Nicole was talking about and training armed school staff. So the virtual reality training isn't a cure-all it doesn't take care of all of the training, but for folks who can afford it, for districts who can afford it, I think it's a good addition to other sorts of training.
But what to Nicole's point, and I know you partly answered that, but I think it is worth drilling down more on that. Like what Nicole was saying, that you're treating the symptoms rather than the cause by using training like this.
Sure, and I don't recommend that schools arm staff and do nothing else to prevent these terrible things from happening in schools. I agree that folks in schools should be trained to identify problems before they happen. What we say when we say that we support armed staff in school, and obviously exceptional training for them, what we're saying is do all of those things to prevent it. And if God forbid something happens and somebody gets through the cracks and does something violent in a school, we want somebody there who can protect the kids on site as it happens.
My sister's a school teacher. My mom retired after 35 years in the classroom. Aunties, cousins, all in education. I think teachers rock. Anecdotally, we heard from someone who was against this software who had said, it would break my heart if I came in and saw my wife, who's an elementary school teacher, playing this game at home, practicing. It would break my heart to think that's the reality. There's something terrifically sad about this, Laura. There's something terrifically sad. It makes me worry that teachers are not going to want to go into the field because this is the reality they may be facing.
Yeah, a couple of things, Michaela. One, the first blog I wrote on this topic after I went through the training myself was called Keeping Kids Safe in a Broken World. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to, as parents and grandparents, we need to look at the reality of life while we aspire for a better world. And I look at that reality. And the other thing is I would recommend that this training be part of a comprehensive training that's done by law enforcement, like our FASTER training is out here in Colorado. It's part of a comprehensive training. I don't suggest that teachers go home and play this at home because it's really part of training scenarios. And we always have to remember, too, any teacher that is or administrator who is armed on campus, they volunteer for that. If there are people who don't want to be anywhere near a firearm, nobody's requiring that. These are all volunteer programs.
Yeah, it is imperative that we also get to the root of why these things are happening and how these individuals that shouldn't have weaponry are getting their hands on. That's imperative. That's a vital part of this conversation. Laura Carnot, I so appreciate you coming on and having a reasonable conversation with me. That's one of the reasons I love having you here. And again, our thanks to Nicole Hockley, the devastation that she and the Sandy Hook parents had to survive, losing their babies to such an atrocious act will never be forgotten. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you so much.
All right, there are all sorts of questions about this explosive new book